how to measure a software team here on Programming with Palermo.
You are programming with Palermo. You deliver software. You need to move fast, deliver quality, and run your software with confidence. Stay tuned for timeless solutions, simple methods, and topics that will propel you forward. And now your host, lifelong programmer, author, teacher, coach, Christian, and charismatic speaker, Jeffrey Palermo.
Many software team lead architects don't implement management practices that are standard in other parts of the business. Now, whether it be OKRs, that stands for Objective Key Results, EOS, or Scaling Up's Scoreboard, or even Kaplan's Balanced Scorecard from the 90s, business measurement has long been a staple of ensuring that a part of the business was functioning well. But executives overseeing software teams often don't have a tool for measuring the effectiveness of a team or an entire software department. Let's dive deeper into this topic. Anyone overseeing a software group of any kind needs a way to measure the effectiveness of that group. Let's zoom down into a single software team and let's look at what must be measured at a minimum for a single software team. And once the measures are identified, the team can then report them up weekly to the appropriate layer of management. And just like every other department, if the measures are aligned with business objectives, then the reports can be relied on to know that the objectives are on track to be accomplished for the business. Okay. Now, the tool that you need in order to measure a software team is a good old-fashioned scorecard.
Programming with Palermo is brought to you by ClearMeasure, a software architecture company that empowers .NET teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their software with confidence in Azure. If your team has a project that's too important to be delayed or derailed, ClearMeasure can help, while keeping your team in the driver's seat and growing in capability. Click on clearmeasure.com for more information. If you are an architect or .NET engineer aspiring to become an architect, check out clearmeasure.com/careers. Now, back to the show.
Every business methodology in the last 3 decades has employed some form of scorecard for the purposes of measurements that are tracked over time and given thresholds of acceptable values. So we'll go over the ClearMeasure Way scorecard template and how to use it. And you see it right here. From cash flow forecasts to sales pipelines to order shipping, most businesses are used to tracking numbers weekly, and some numbers are tracked monthly, but in software, weekly is really better aligned with the normal flow of a software team. You can obtain the ClearMeasure Way scorecard template for free from the ClearMeasure website. It's a Microsoft Excel worksheet, and the first tab is the scorecard itself. The next tab is instructions for how to use the scorecard, and it comes pre-populated with the minimum suggested measures for a software team. And as you become more comfortable with it, you'll undoubtedly add more measures to it. The heavily researched DORA metrics are part of our minimum, so you'll find those on the scorecard as well. Now, at the top of the scorecard template, you'll find a link to a tutorial article that explains how to use the scorecard and how the Excel template is put together. And each week, you'll have the team populate the numbers in the columns that represent the each week. And over time, you'll probably choose to hide the rows that are in the past so that you can glance at the current week and probably the trailing 12 weeks and thereby getting a good glance as with a rolling quarter of performance. Now, I want to talk about team alignment. The measures on the scorecard are divided by the pillars of the ClearMeasure Way, but they're preceded at the top by a team alignment section. And we suggest that the software team's scorecard include top-level business measures that are managed by the executive overseeing the team. Without tracking the impact the software team is making on the business, it's really easy to become misaligned with those business objectives. So we want to fill those out here. And if you don't already have these quarterly targets, I'd invite you to use the free team alignment template that's also provided by the ClearMeasure Way. We have plenty of information about how to align a software team to become effective. And once it's clear what the team is trying to accomplish and where it fits into the business, go ahead and add those few measures to the scorecard. And if the measures have an acceptable threshold, go ahead and add that into column F. And this will cause the auto highlighting to work, coloring green for numbers within the thresholds and red for numbers outside the threshold. Now, the first pillar we suggest you measure is quality. This should be really the first priority of any software team. Without quality, a team cannot be effective. Without consistently delivering high quality, the team is going to be circling back to diagnose and analyze and fix defects. And this tends to accumulate. And over time, teams without quality end up having very little time left over to actually work on new features or valuable changes. And so we recommend the few essentials when it comes to measuring quality. First, we have defects caught. That's new defects caught before production. Defects escaped, and that's defects found in production. And the target is to have 0 defects in production. Then defects repaired. These are defects repaired and pushed into production after being found. And then mean time to resolve. This is the quality side of MTTR. And that's the total time spent on defects divided by the number of defects that were actually fixed. Now, ultimately, you do want 0 defects to escape into production, but you also want to track the defects that are caught before production. Think about it. Every time you move a card to the left on your work tracking board, that signifies a problem that has to go backwards in your process so that it can be corrected. And that's a defect, so track it. Okay. The next part is stability. The stability pillar looks at what is happening with the software running in a production environment serving customers. 2 of the DORA metrics live here as well as a couple of others. Our goal is to empower our team to deploy changes frequently to production at any time during the week, all without business disruptions. Additionally, we want to know that the software runs in a way that supports the users, again, without business disruption. Software spends most of its useful life in a state of slow changes, but running day to day, yielding its return on investment. And the slow changes are mostly required so that it can be properly maintained. So the measures that we recommend for this pillar at a minimum are the number of deployments, and that's the number of deployments each week. Next is the major production issues. That's the ones that actually cause a business disruption. And then minor production issues. Those are issues that don't result in a business disruption, but we want to track those regardless. And then MTTR, mean time to recovery, the total number of hours spent on fixing things, on the repairs, divided by the number of issues that the team actually resolved. Now, regardless of the service desk system that you use to track production issues, there's always more statuses than you actually need. So choose which statuses represent a business disruption and which ones don't. There will always be production issues from time to time, but the key is to never have a business disruption due to one of these issues. All right, next category, next pillar is speed. Our last category on the scorecard is for the speed pillar of the Clear Measure Way. This is where we track the productivity of the team, the throughput of new features and valuable software changes. And it is appropriately last on the list because quality and stability have to take priority over it if we have any hope of speed that's acceptable to the business. And these measures are very simple and follow the DORA model as well. First is items delivered. That's really the number of development items, that features or changes that are pushed into production each week. And then work in process, the number of development items that are currently in the process from being prioritized and say, hey, we're going to work on this, but they're not yet in production. Now, because we're tracking a new value every week, a new number in each of these measures every week, we know the cycle time by comparing the number of items in process and the items delivered per week. Kanban research, interestingly enough, Kanban research has some good findings for thresholds of work in process that tend to work. Now, my favorite is to start with a value equal to the number of members on the software team. And this allows for each team member to be working on one item at a time. Then, as you get the hang of it, as you become more confident, you can increase this threshold as you verify that the items delivered by the team each week are increasing and not decreasing. Okay. And now when it comes to measuring the throughput or the speed of your software team, These two metrics are typically sufficient. But as you go along, your team may want to measure some additional items if you find them valuable. And so you can go ahead and do that. Now, one often cited reason for software teams not reporting up to executives with a scorecard is the administrative time that it takes to compile the numbers. Also, the time to put together the report and answer questions that invariably come back down when you send up the report. But any department in any business really could give those same reasons for not wanting to send an actual report. Now, 50 or 40 years ago, Fred Brooks wrote an essay in his Mythical Man Month book. The essay was called The Surgical Team. Now, in that essay, he lays out a framework for the ideal software team structure. Effective large teams end up with a network made up of many of these team units. Large teams typically aren't effective without subdivision into a structure similar to Mr. Brooks' structure. And, this is probably where the notion of feature teams came from, but I digress. In the essay, Mr. Brooks discusses a team secretary. And this role is responsible for all the record keeping, logistics, and outside communication for the team. Much like what's necessary for a surgical team in an operating room. The surgeons need to stay focused on the patient, so there's the need for someone to enable the surgeons to do just that. Now, each team should have a non-engineer responsible for administrative excellence for the team. And without this role, we frequently see teams that underperform, not because of lack of engineering prowess, but because of completely non-technical administrative misses. And in short, managing a scorecard is an administrative task. So it should be done with someone strong in that area, even if an engineer has to be asked for a particular number. To conclude this topic, every software team needs a scorecard. The scorecard is the basis for a periodic report to a company's executive team. And it answers so many questions, such as, how much can my team deliver? Just to give you an example. And without a scorecard, all we know is how many hours the team works. It doesn't do a company much good to have a team that works 100 hours a week if the production system is brittle and new changes take months to implement. A scorecard tells us how our team is doing, and it tracks our progress as we implement the principles and practices in the Clear Measure way on our journey to a fully effective and high-performing software team. You can do it. I believe in you. Now go do it. God bless. Thank you for programming with Palermo.
You've been watching Programming with Palermo, your primary place for highly productive programming protocols and practices. Remember, you have what it takes. You can do this. You are a programmer, formed by God Himself and called to this profession for a purpose. You can catch every episode at Palermo.network, as well as syndicated locations nationwide. We're so glad you tuned in. Until next time, may God bless you, and thanks for Programming with Palermo. Programming with Palermo has made a special arrangement with Marketplace Chaplains. Besides programming challenges, we all face issues in life where we need some help. If you'd like, you can call a chaplain confidentially. To speak with a gentleman, dial 512-923-8178. Or to speak with a lady, dial 512-619-6950. The show won't know you called, and everything is kept in strict secrecy. This is a free service, available if you or a friend need it.